call for the opening of the City of Cottonwood Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of October 21, 2019 to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Hart?
Present.
Commissioner Dow, absent. Commissioner Dowling?
Here, present.
Commissioner Norwood?
Present.
And Commissioner Sherman? Here. Chairman Williams?
Hi. Okay. The next item, we have two sets of minutes to approve. First, the September 16th, 2019 regular meeting minutes. Do I have any additions, corrections, deletions that need to be made? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Would you do that?
I will move that we approve the minutes from September 16th, 2019 regular meeting.
Second motion.
Second motion. I have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Approval of the minutes for the September 30th, 2019 special meeting. Again, any corrections, additions to that? All right. I'll entertain a motion for that.
I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve the September 30th, 2019 special meeting minutes.
Okay. Do I have
Second motion.
Second, Norwood. Commissioner Norwood, second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next order is election of a vice chair to fill a vacant position. I sort of inquired as to volunteers. I had two. One is here tonight, Commissioner Dowling. So I'm going to open up the nomination and nominate Jesse Dowling as the election for the vice chairman of the commission. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hart?
Aye.
Commissioner Dowling? Oh, I'm sorry.
How does this work? I don't. Okay, never mind.
Commissioner Norwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman? Aye. Chairman Williams?
Aye. Congratulations, sir. You've been doing a great job filling in, and we appreciate.
I shall do my best.
Yes. Well, that's going to be really good. All right. Next item is call to the public. Anybody would like to address the commission on any item that's not on the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the business meeting, and we'd like to change the agenda a little bit. The discussion item, we have an item number 5, the Terabeni update. For the convenience of the folks who are here for that real quick, let's do that first, and then we'll do the larger item second. And remember, this is a discussion item only. There will not be any action by the commission on this tonight.
Thank you, Chairman Williams, members of the commission. This was approved with a 1-year extension in July, and you asked for it to come back sort of to see what progress the applicant was making. To give a little bit of a history on this, originally the farm project was approved on January 25th of 2016. It received a 6-month extension on January 23rd of 2017, a 6-month extension on December 18th of 2017, 12-month extension on June 18th of 2018, and then most recently on June 18th of this year was given a 12-month extension, and that is when you asked for this to come back for your review after a couple of months, which would have been the September meeting last week. We postponed that 1 month at the request of the applicant so that she could attend the meeting. She has sent correspondence to staff that she would not be at the meeting this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and show you some pictures and present what we have at this point. There's also, at the last meeting, some neighbors showed up. They're also here this evening, and I believe they'll want to speak with you also. So the site is located along Willard Road. It's 3 parcels on the east side of Willard and 1 parcel on the west side of Willard. The farm project would have different phases and different types of product in there. These are some pictures from June of 2018 when they received a time extension. Also 2018. This was July 2018, so it would be 3 months ago when they received the last 12-month extension. These were some pictures taken that day. And then these were some pictures, or are some pictures that were taken mid-afternoon today. So there is pretty significant overgrowth that's still occurring. So that concludes what I have to say. As I said, the applicant has stated she would not be here this evening, would rather come back to you with more of an update in November or December. So at that point, that's the information I have, and I'll pass it on to you and available for any questions.
Okay. The main thing we were concerned about at the last meeting was our stipulation number 9. Any fire hazard or trash be removed within 60-day time frame from that meeting. Has that been done?
From looking at the weed growth, that portion of any fire hazard has actually gotten worse since July. They did do a minor little bit of cleanup. There were some trailers, storage, cargo, hauling type trailers that have been moved. There's been minor dirt relocated around the site, but no significant change overall.
Okay, very good. Thank you. At this point, anybody have questions of Jim? Before we really see him?
I did sort of fly through the pictures.
No, that's fine. Okay. I want to have Emery Seeley, neighbor wants to. If you'll give us your name for the record, please.
Absolutely. Emery, E-M-E-R-Y, last name is Seeley, S as in Sam, E-E-L-E-Y. At the July meeting, when the extension was approved, we had requested the addition of cleanup of the trash. I can tell you that the pictures I presented you in July are the same. The big pile of brush and trash behind me is still there. The other pile that Mr. Paget referred to, some of the brush has been moved, but it's only been moved to the side. The tumbleweed has not been cleaned up. I'm extremely disappointed that these conditions were made and yet they're not being met. So,
Very good, sir.
do you have any questions? Or I'll tell you, if anybody from the committee wants to come over, I'll be happy to show you what our view is and what we're talking about. And
I think we've been on the probably trying to look at it, and we appreciate your input, though. That's very helpful, because you're there all the time. Watch
Thank you.
Day to day. Thank you, sir.
all right.
I don't have any other slips. Does anybody else want to address this item? Do I understand our city attorney's? Is he on the phone tonight with us?
Yes, he is joining us by.
Are you there, Mr. Horton?
Steve, are you there?
Yes. Steve, Chairman Williams here. We made this a stipulation as for for the extension going forward. This number 9. I guess we're looking for some guidance, and again, this is a discussion item only to go forward for possibly revoking this use permit at this time, since we're not seeing any progress at all. Or do we stuck with a 12-month extension.
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think the way it's agendized tonight, I think what you'd be limited to doing is, I guess there is a discussion of the project status, but in terms of any further action, I think it would happen by way of directing staff to put it on a future agenda for action by you.
Okay.
I'll work with staff to frame that agenda item so that you can take appropriate action. Okay. If that's your choice.
Okay. So it is possible to do some action on this. We're not totally hands tied. We can, but I understand. We're not going to do anything tonight at all. That's for sure. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Comment? Yes, Commissioner.
I understand some of the problems that the people who are developing this have had, but not cleaning up a fire hazard is very much a concern that I share. Oops, sorry. I think that if you're presenting a fire hazard to your neighbor, that's a serious concern, and I think it's something that we should be concerned about.
Yes. Commissioner Dow, any?
Well, we really love to see the project go forward, but at this rate, I have the same concerns. We're not seeing any advancement in the project, and it just seems like it's getting worse. So I have my concerns about that.
To Mr. Dowling. Vice Chairman, sir.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I would have to concur with the previous two comments. I really had hoped when this came up the last time that they would have gotten the impression that they needed to actually perform. It appears as though they have not. That is somewhat frustrating. And I think that we run the risk of appearing somewhat feckless if we cannot hold people to task for what they've said they would do or we ask them to do. So I would agree that as much as we would like to see it move ahead, it's not doing anything, and we've tried repeatedly to get it to do something, and that leaves us without many options.
Yeah. Mr. Darwood.
I would like to see this get on the quickest agenda at the quickest time as we can do it.
Yes.
There hasn't been really any action other than turning dirt for 3 years on the project. Right. And I agree with Mr. Dow that nothing has really happened, and I don't think anything will happen unless we make it happen. And the only way to do that is to vote on it.
Yes.
I would totally agree with all of that said.
I would second those and want to direct staff to look into this as a future agenda item as soon as possible.
Okay.
So we'll know, we can officially look at our options if we have any and move forward from there. And get the developer here to talk about it. Okay. And I'd like to, again, hear their side. I'm very disappointed that they can't get a representative for these last two meetings, so, but.
Depending on the action to be taken, we have to give 30 days notice to the applicant.
So that's fine. Yeah, right.
It would likely be the December meeting because we're closer to 30 days to the November meeting.
Sure, that would be fine. Yeah, we just don't want to lag on and go for it. Okay. I think that's all we need to do on that one. And let's go on back to our new business. And our one item of new business is DR 19011, MERKIN Vineyards at Old Town Cottonwood. Request for a design review of a new winery, cellar, restaurant, caretaker's residence, vineyards, and pocket park at 770 North Verde Heights Drive. Scott?
Thank you, Chairman Williams, Commission. Good evening. DR 19-011, MERKIN Vineyards at Old Town Cottonwood. Site is right up here on the hillside, kind of behind us a little bit. Mostly vacant property. There's an old structure there that's no longer being used. Basically abandoned, has been partially demolished to bring up, to be incorporated into the new use of the new buildings and restaurants in there. The project, or the site was rezoned in 2017 to PAD, Planned Area Development, with a stipulation that it be brought back to the Commission for Design Review. And that's where we are tonight. The applicant has brought back their redesigned project to you. What you saw during the rezone was a conceptual plan in the master development plan, so they still needed to come back for design review when they could fine tune and do modifications, with the understanding that the intent of the rezone still applies with the use of the land that was approved. Right now it does consist of 2 parcels, this larger one here and the smaller one down here on the corner. They will be combined before the project moves forward. It's approximately 7.03 acres when it does get combined. And the project will include a winery, a restaurant, tasting room, cellar, caretaker's residence, vineyards, and a pocket park. That pocket park would be down here, kind of in the corner below the hill where you see the other parcel there. It's gonna have 2 containers for ice cream, gelato, coffee, places to sit down there for customers. As I mentioned, they're gonna reuse portions of the existing building. Vehicle access will be from the existing driveway along Verde Heights, which will be improved to required standards. They have 76 parking stalls on site, including 1 down below for ADA at the pocket park. It does exceed the requirements of the parking ordinance. They will provide walking access to the restaurant from Old Town via a stairway through the terrace vineyards, and also an incline lift will provide access from the pocket park to the restaurant. There will be a walkway from the top of Verde Heights to Old Town that's still being discussed between the applicant and the staff, the city engineer. Right now, there's talk about allowing public access through the property while they're open. When they're not open, when their hours of operation, they're closed. There's no easy access from Verde Heights to Old Town, so we're still trying to figure out what that is gonna be. That is a stipulation on the staff report if you choose to approve it tonight, that they get that figured out with city staff, with the city engineer to accommodate that public access. The off-site improvements will include curb and gutter along Verde Heights. That's the extent of the improvements that are required. Unfortunately, the city engineer was unable to make it tonight. He had planned on it, but he just couldn't be here. So it will be curb and gutter, and again, that other walking path, it's not necessarily going to be a full sidewalk. Again, they're going to work that out. So that is the extent of improvements on Verde Heights Drive that the city engineer can require. They are proposing alternative surfacing for the parking lot, the driveway, and the access areas. Again, that's going to be worked out with the city engineer to ensure that it would meet any code requirements that we have. And they are requesting an 8-foot tall fence to surround the property for protection from wildlife. That is something that they can request from the commission that you can approve as part of this design review. These are examples of alternative surfacing from the company that they're looking to use. That's one example. That's their site plan looking down from the corner of Pinal and Verde Heights. Site plan showing the layout of the property with your pocket park down here on the corner, the incline lift coming up here, as well as the stairway, the restaurant in this area with the greenhouse, parking throughout the area over here, the access up Verde Heights up here on the top of the hill. I would like to also point out on their landscape plan, this area right here is extremely steep. It's not very easy to plant anything in that area. Had it been, they would have shown that. They will be landscaping the majority of the frontage along Verde Heights up here, along the entrance here, and there will be around the rest of the property over here as well. It's just this area right here is very, very steep. They're gonna leave it mostly natural as much as they can, but they just can't go in there and plant anything. And the applicant is here tonight, and they can go into more detail on that if you'd like. There will be terraced vineyards throughout the hillside through here, around over here, on the backside, looking at as much as they can on vineyards there. Try and collect as much rainwater as they can for irrigation, and also using city water as well. That's kind of a little layout floor plan of the restaurant area, the greenhouse over here. Caretaker's residence to be over here with the winery. And down here is the pocket park in this area. There will be a sidewalk on the corner down here that goes around up to a portion of Verde Heights right there, but after that, they can't extend it up there due to the nature of Verde Heights Road. And some more site plans of the roof deck. Some elevations in the northwest, northeast. Also at the pocket park, that's what you'll be seeing from down below here. Additional southwest and southeast elevations. And these right here are the rainwater tanks that they have, several of them. I believe there's 5 or 6 of them. And other northwest elevations, and then also on the east and south. That's the winery and caretakers building, elevations on there. That's their renderings with their color palette. They do have samples, material samples here tonight. If you'd like to see them, we can get them passed around to you. Also their boards here to view. Their signage, staff is still looking at it to determine if it meets the sign code. There's some questions that we need to sit down with the applicant to determine what their uses are versus what they're allowed. So we're gonna sit down with the applicant, go over that so we can accurately determine what they're trying to do, what signs they're allowed to have, and if they're over or under, and where those signs could be placed. So we've got a lot going on there right now, so we just want to ensure that what they do meets code, because they are allowed a certain number of signs per use, not necessarily per property, but per use, and they will have multiple uses on this site. Again, some examples of the signs that they might use on the containers here, on the entrances. So before and after photos, I don't know how well you can see them on the screen. You should have them in your packets. Also some neighboring properties. There's some before and after looking from Main Street. That's what it looks like, or what it did look like before there was some demolition on the property, and then what you would see after completion of the project. This project is proposed to be phased over the course of the next couple of years. Back in August, the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council granted an extension, a phased extension of this project timeline to go to, I believe, March of 2022, or it might have been June of 2022. But it gives them a 3-year phasing plan on this to complete the project. There's another before and after view looking at it from Cactus Street. This is the view from Verde Heights, before and after. There's the entrance gate here. As you can see, this fence, this 8-foot fence that they're requesting to go around the property here for protection. Another photo from Main Street. This winery view from the northwest and from the parking lot. And that's again the fence elevation from the perimeter fence around the property. That's another photo of the proposed alternative surfacing, or an example of it. There's another example there. And again, they have brought samples of these for you to see. This is what the site looks like. This picture is from the original approval, however, it stays the same. They haven't done any development up there yet. Like I said, they've only partially demolished the building that's up there. Sorry. There's another picture. That was the building as it sat. And that is a recent picture showing an extended parking lot over here. The south side here is private with city parking lot over here. So they are adjacent to several public parking lots. So they do meet their parking requirements, but they do also have the convenience of being fairly close to city-owned parking. That's the public parking there. The view looking up Verde Heights from the intersection. It's looking down towards the intersection. That sidewalk is going to wrap around. The part of the sidewalk they're going to do is going to wrap around to approximately right in here. It's looking up Verde Heights, and down Verde Heights from the entrance. And that is the remainder of the building as it sits now. So like you said, they did demolish part of it. That's what they're going to incorporate into the new structures. And that's looking out to the entrance from the interior of the property. As I mentioned, the applicant is here. They do have a presentation that they would also like to give you. I can answer any questions you may have prior to that or after that. It's whatever you desire. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any technical questions of Scott, or do we wait for the applicant?
My questions are for the applicant.
All right. Commissioner Dow?
Scott, do you know if they're going to do anything with the utility poles? It looks like a spider web right now. I'm just curious if they're actually going to move some of those utility stuff.
I know that that's part of the problem with the sidewalk. Some of those poles are there and they're in the way and they're going to remain. If all of them are, that's a question we could ask the applicant.
Okay.
Any questions of Scott, or you want for the applicant?
Just one quick question, Scott. Is it appropriate now to ask about possibility of describing the phases? What's going to come first? What would be next? Or is that something that can be addressed later?
That's just really up to you. If you wanted to address now, I can.
I was just wondering in general how the project was going to flow from a phase standpoint. You mentioned it would come in phases, so what would be phase one?
Yeah, I think the applicant can better explain exactly what their intent is based on what they show in their letter of intent on how they're going to phase it, what they expect to get done, and how long it'll take. If that works for you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Just in general, how, what's going to come first? Obviously the building, but planting and whatever,
Right.
Okay.
Commissioner, any question? Okay, I really don't have anything further. We'll see what the applicant has to say. Well, I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Okay.
And who's here representing the applicants tonight?
Yeah, I want to hear.
Good evening. My name's Reynold Rodacia, and I'm with Architecture Works Green over in Clarkdale. Also with me is two of the folks from my office, Nadia Begin and Jason Fetterbush, who worked on the project, and then MERKIN Vineyards and Maynard's project manager, Matt Lavore, is here also, as well as Krishan from SEC, who is the civil engineer on the project. So we have a PowerPoint presentation. The drawings are a little bit more finished than what you had just seen, with a little bit more detail. And we brought two boards. Yeah, I'll let you handle that. So as Scott said, the property is the 7.3 acres up on the hill just to the west of us here. And the intent is to build out the property with pocket park down below, restaurant, patio up on the upper level, along with a winery, a production winery, a wine cellar and a greenhouse for food production for MERKIN Vineyards, restaurant there on the hill here, but also the Osteria here in town, and Caduceus up in Jerome, et cetera. So the greenhouse part of it is an integral part of the food production and what they're going to serve in the restaurant there. Let's go to the next slide. So the site plan, we've highlighted the boundaries of the site here, as Scott showed you. The entrance, the main entrance to the property is here. Today, the main entrance is here. So we are planning to move the entrance opposite Mesquite Drive so that the traffic is more head-on as people come out of Mesquite and people come out of the parking lot from MERKIN, and they aren't offset. So moving the monument sign as well, replacing the monument sign with a new monument sign at the gate. Before we go into the property, I want to just talk about the vineyard and the planting that will go on most of the acreage. And Matt Lavore is here to address the fencing with you, which we can, as well as the improvements along Verde Heights Drive. But in order for the vineyard to operate correctly, and I know most of you know this, it has to be fenced. And the fact that we're in town here complicates it somewhat, in the sense that the fence has got to be higher in some areas than the regulations allow. And the reason is deer and raccoons, et cetera, that will climb over a 6-foot fence. And if the grapes are not protected, then there's no harvest and there's no wine, and the project is not working very well. I have a piece of the fence that we're proposing, and there was one thing that we had changed over the last few weeks after Maynard took another hard look at the fencing, but we reduced the height of the gate to 6 feet along Verde at the entrance, and then the fence of the boundary of the property. So it's this right here. The fence, we are requesting an 8-foot fence, and I'll show you the material after I show you the presentation. The plan is to build the vineyard on the existing slopes. So we're not intending to bring a D8 cat out there and change the grading very much. And Krishan is here from SEC, and he can explain the grading to you once we get finished here with this part of this presentation. As far as the entrance, the concept here is to have the entrance, the driveway somewhat long, and compact the parking here into several rows, and not just have a single row down the center. And the idea is to, as you enter the property, to drive through the vineyard before you reach the parking lot. It also allows us to condense the paving and some of the just the vehicular traffic. So once you drive in, as Scott mentioned, we have about 75 or 76 parking spaces here. And the main building is the restaurant, which is here. Again, the concept here, once you get out of your car and you walk towards the restaurant, there is a covered walkway here so that you actually can see from this location, you can see through and see Old Town Cottonwood and see Sycamore and et cetera. You can see out into the distance. The wine cellar is adjacent to the restaurant, and it is it's a building for fermentation and storage of the wine. So there's no real production going on here. There's no crushing. There's no heavy equipment in and around that building other than a forklift to move barrels. But the wine cellar will be visible through a glass wall facing the restaurant. Once you walk through the passageway here, you're out in the open here, and you have a broad view of Old Town and the landscape beyond. And then there's a patio here, outdoor patio, which is mostly covered, which allows for food, drink, and sitting there. It will be fenced or contained so that people cannot walk around the property with glasses of wine or bottles of wine. Once you come through this area, there's an incline lift here which will lead you down to this pocket park, which is obviously accessible from Pima and Verde Heights and Old Town. And the pocket park is an open to the public space, sitting, eating, drinking. There will be some retail down at the pocket park. And for those who did not want to use that incline lift, there would be a stair adjacent to the incline lift that will take you either up or down. Also on the site, adjacent to the restaurant, we're proposing the food production greenhouse. And we have it on this side of the property because of the more southern or southeastern exposure. So any other location on the property wasn't as conducive to the growing and the use of the greenhouse. We also wanted to keep that work close to the restaurant, and the service area, the commissary kitchen, is in this area of that building. So on this side of the site, we are proposing a production winery. It's a 2-level building, and in it there would be a caretaker's residence, which is on this end of the building. The main production, most of the building is here in the center, and on this far side is a lab for the winery and wine production. This building is accessed through this driveway, this loop-around driveway, and it also has a driveway going over to the cellar where the wine will be stored. There will be piping underground to move the wine from this building to that building. So you're not taking large barrels in a truck from this building to that building, but it will be pumped from one building to the next. That, in general, gives you the broad overview. Let's go to the next. So again, we took some photographs from Old Town. These are recent, and superimposed our project onto that photograph. You can see the pocket park here. It actually has 2 containers. This is one larger container, one for retail and one for gelato and espresso that will be served down here in the pocket park. There's about 50 seats or so in the pocket park, public seating. And then you'll also be able to access this incline lift, which is ADA accessible. The car will be able to carry up to 5 passengers, and it'll operate much as an elevator. So there's not an operator in the car, but you get into the car, you press a button, you go up, you press a button, you go down. So pretty straightforward. And then you can see alongside of it, there is a pedestrian staircase, outdoor staircase. We did break the staircase up so it's not one straight run all the way up and you get exhausted by the time you get up, but there's a sitting area kind of midway on the staircase right there. So you could sit, take in the view before you continue on up. And then, of course, the patio is right in here. The one thing you will see in this is this cantilevered container, which is part of the winery. And then you'll see grapes, vineyard, and plants on this hillside. And the Verdant Heights side is more complex, and we cannot plant on the slope that is there today. So our intention is to take some of this material that's on this very steep slope today. We're obviously not going to change the height from here to the street, but we are going to take some of the steepness out of that and create 3 5-foot tall concrete retaining walls that would allow us to terrace from one wall to the next rows of vineyards along in this area. That material we take off of this hill, we're going to bring around, and it's going to help us with fill for some of the buildings. Let's go to the next one. Just another shot from Old Town, and you can see the winery being over here, a little clearer shot of the incline lift in these buildings here. And of the pocket park, there's access this way off of Pima, and then there'll be access from this location off of Verde Heights. It will all be ADA accessible. This is a shot of the entrance. So like I mentioned before, the existing entrance is up here about another 75 feet. So we intend to move it down, have it directly across Mesquite. And this is a shot of the 6-foot-high fence and the 6-foot-high gate. There is a pedestrian gate right here. So we are intending to build a sidewalk from this point to our property line, which is out here about another 100, 150 feet. So this will be curbed and guttered. And this sidewalk here will connect through the site and down to Pima via the incline lift or the staircase. This gate will be an electrified gate in the sense that it'll be open, obviously, towards for all the business hours, and then it will close at, I believe it'll be about 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. Matt can answer that. The monument sign is here, so it's a little different than what's there today. And then you can see the steepness of these grades right here, which do not allow us to put a sidewalk in there without some really severe retaining walls. We are intending to curb and gutter this area here. The fire department's asking for another fire hydrant, as well as a fire hydrant on site closer to the restaurant. So this is a picture of it today, and this is how we envision it in the future. Once you're coming into the site, you'll be able to see the winery on the left, and the parking lot and the main building straight ahead of you. The top of the greenhouse you'll be able to see off to the right. This winery is accessible, like I said, down the driveway down below, which will loop around, but then also we're designing this so that you can drive the grapes and equipment up onto the roof of the winery, which is covered, which will allow for a crush pad on the top level, so the grapes can be crushed, and then through portals in the roof of the building, the juice can then go down to the tanks down below. So it'll be a gravity system. Another view from Verde Heights and a view of the greenhouse. And you can see the terracing that we're proposing and the walls that we're proposing. I don't know if you recall back in 2017 when the PAD was approved, there was a 24-foot high retaining wall proposed here. And we have completely eliminated that. and the grading, thanks to our office and Krishan's office, have come up with this solution, an alternate solution. And we have to thank Maynard as well, so. Another view from Cactus, and this is a little more detailed drawing than what Scott had shown you. We're showing more of the vineyards and a more realistic depiction of how it's going to actually look from Cactus. Here is the 8-foot-high fence, and it dead ends into a fence that is required by state law for the incline lift. So that incline lift is fenced on both sides with a minimum 7-foot-high fence, and that's a state law requirement, so that there's nobody hopping the fence to jump on the incline lift when, you know, at 12 o'clock at night. A more descriptive plan showing the pocket park. Access to the pocket park is here and here, so it's accessed off of both streets. This is the public area. This is a 40-foot container divided into two, and then there's a 20-foot container here, which is an ADA toilet and storage. The incline lift is here, and that is also fenced. So that 8-foot-high fence is coming along and dead ending into this fence. This is completely fenced. There is a 6-foot gate here, which will prevent access after hours from people using this staircase. And of course, this is a building right here. The fence will then pick up at this point and head around Verde Heights. So that this whole property now would be contained and secure. Some sections through the building. The design of the building, Maynard really asked us to come up with something that was more of the old style mining architecture. And so the style of this building is somewhat reminiscent of that. So the roof lines, the clear story, the large steel trusses. We are proposing that the walls of the building remain in the same vernacular that the Masonic Lodge was, those 4816 block. So we will be building the building out of that same material. The color, that block was not painted. At least I didn't recognize it as paint. And, but we will be painting the block, but it'll be in the 4-inch block, not the 8-inch block, which is more typical, more, so for these buildings here, that vernacular, that exterior steel, concrete block, concrete, is going to be the material of choice. The greenhouse is prefabricated. It's a galvanized structure with polycarbonate glazing, and it will be sitting on a poured-in-place concrete base. So the prefabricated structure is this gabled structure here, and this is poured-in-place concrete retaining wall to have the structure sit on. This part, this is the connecting part. So this is the wine cellar, and this is the restaurant, and this part is the entrance to this building, and we're proposing several containers, a 2-story container here and a single-story container here attached to this building, but by roof also attached to this building. And this is the passageway between the buildings that allows you to see into Old Town from the parking lot. You can see that right here in the drawing right here. Adjacent to the entrance, there's 2 rainwater collection tanks, and we are intending to collect all the rainwater off of all the roofs. for part of the irrigation for the landscaping. This is more of a bird's eye view of what you'll see from the Old Town side. And again, the restaurant patio, passageway, these containers here, the wine cellar, and then the winery over here with these cantilevered containers here. So in this shot here, that arrow is showing you the direction we're looking at, with Old Town being over here. A lot of the finishes on the outside, besides the concrete block, are going to be rusted steel, so that brownish copper look that you see with typical galvanized, corrugated rusted steel will be part of the look. The containers, they, as we know, are steel by nature, but they'll be painted. A view of the entrance, again, the restaurant, this is the kitchen aspect, and so these two walls are standing today, and they were part of the Masonic Lodge, and the front side of this building has two walls standing, which you probably saw up on the hill, and they will remain and be part of the wine bar. So we tried our best to maintain what was salvageable out of that building, and I don't know if any of you were up there in the last year or so and saw, you know, what had happened to that building over the many years of being vandalized. Let's go to the next shot. Again, another shot of the Pocket Park. We are proposing canvas tensile structure for shade. We looked at more of a landscaping shade solution for the Pocket Park, but in speaking with Maynard, decided that it wouldn't be effective enough, and people were not going to wait 5 years or 10 years for the trees to grow up to sit out there, and we decided on a different shade solution and came up with the tensile structure. There will be some signage out here, and there's obviously going to have to be a guardrail because that Pocket Park is higher than the street. And this is the entrance to the incline lift going up. Another bird's eye view looking, you'll be able to see the greenhouse here. We have a couple more rainwater collection tanks here. The entrance or exit to the incline lift here and the stair coming up. And this is the patio. And more of a view of the winery over here and that crush pad up on the roof here. This lower level, which is accessible not only to the car access, but also fire department access. And we had both the chief and Rick and John and folks from the fire department at our office multiple times as we've designed this project, and making sure that what we were doing, they, first of all, approved of, but secondly, gave us input on what they wanted. And so the buildings reflect some of those conversations. This is the winery, and this is the lower level, so you'll be able to drive from the parking lot around the winery and back up to the cellar or back out to the parking lot. The main production area is here, and this building is all poured-in-place concrete. So the walls, the floor, the roof of this building is poured-in-place concrete, so that is the look of that building, which again is both historic and modern, but there will be a staff area on this end And on this end, there's more production and a staircase going up to the lab. And you could barely see the outline of those containers that are going to project out up on the second level here. There is an ADA parking spot here. And this back wall is about 14 feet into the hill. So it's a large retaining wall. From these drawings here, you can see that lower level. There will be a staircase right here that goes up to the roof deck, which is right here. This is the roof deck, so you'll be able to, instead of taking the driveway down and around the building, you'll be able to drive up here. It is gated, and you'll be able to drive onto the roof of this building. Adjacent to it are 3 parking spaces for staff, for those who are working in the building, plus this ADA parking space down below. But this is a covered roof deck, as you can see the roof covering here, the roof, and this is open air. And there will be these openings in the roof so that the fruit, once it's crushed, can be directed down below to the fermentation tanks down below. This portion is the caretaker's residence, and there will need to be someone living on site full-time, 24/7 for 365 days of the year. So it's a 1-bedroom apartment, and on this side is the lab and an office for the winery. We also, back up just for a second, there's also another dumpster area here which will serve this building. I didn't mention there is also dumpster recycling at the service entrance to the restaurant. This is another shot of the winery, the roof level. The public parking is down here. We've got 2 rainwater collection tanks taking water off this roof. And this is that steep driveway coming up to the roof itself. And then there's some parking behind this fence for the staff that work in the winery. Next. And a view of the winery from down below. You can see these 2 cantilevered containers, large garage doors allowing access into the production area of the winery. And that's the roof deck on top. The fire department has, obviously we haven't done construction drawings, but by reviewing these drawings has approved the grades, the widths of these driveways that we're proposing here tonight, the width of this driveway going up, et cetera. So they were feeling comfortable with access actually to all the buildings that we're proposing. Again, more of a bird's eye view. There will be a dump station here at the service entrance to the commissary kitchen for Maynard's food truck, but the food truck will not be selling out of that parking lot or off that site, so it will only be there to be serviced, to restock, to empty, to load, etc. So we've designed this area here large enough for that food truck and the trash truck, etc., to go in here. So there's dumpster here, there's recycling, compost, there's 3 compost bins as well. And that compost has to do with the production, food production in the greenhouse. This walkway, which will be open to the public, is covered. And so there is a trellis, a steel trellis, going along this entire walkway, which where our landscape plan shows, I believe, wisteria or jasmine growing on this trellis here, not grapes. Next one, and our color board here, and I'd like to show you the alternative parking material we're talking about, and I have a piece of the fencing. Let me finish the slideshow, and I could show you these, and we can focus more on that. So, the color palette, I realize that in this slide you're really not getting a true picture of the colors. We have, we've described each color, each piece of material as best we could. I don't actually have a exact color board with me other than this board here. Next. I'm going to let Krishan talk to you a little bit about the grading, because the grading for the site is the major portion of what we actually will be grading here. And as I mentioned earlier, this portion of the site where the major part of the vineyard is, we're wanting to do with hand equipment. So I'll let Krishan talk to you briefly about that. Just the grading.
Krishan Ginige with SCC. I think as far as the grading is concerned, what we've taken into account is the steep slopes, but at the same time, what we've looked at is like the general slope of the entire site is about 2-to-1 slope. So it changes in certain places, but that is the general the slope. So we are going to use that existing slope terrain, and then so there's like a 2-to-1 slope in most of these areas, but by creating terraces, we can still create the required terrace, but at the same time be as closely as we can be as close as possible to the existing grade. So in very simple terms, that is the concept that we are proposing. And at the same time, although it is not visible in this drawing, the terrace is going to be invertedly sloped. So what we are going to do is we are going to capture the existing rainfall, and which can get infiltrated into the ground. So in a way that we are reducing the runoff, which is going to be coming from this side to the existing sidewalk. When we did the design for this parking at the previous project, we did take into account the existing drainage at full capacity, obviously knowing some of the challenges that we had with drainage flowing into Old Town. I believe this is going to be an added benefit to some of the flooding challenges that's going to, it's going to be mitigated up to a certain point. So in very simple terms, that's the concept that we have. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yes, regarding along Verde Heights Road, Collins meant that the grading is not conducive to putting in a sidewalk or a path, but with the additional traffic and so forth you're going to generate up there, seems to me that would be, what would be the real challenge to do a 5-foot inside that curb? What really would be the challenge? With some kind of terracing wall or something, but I mean, is it really that monumental a project to do?
Along Verde Heights, there are a number of challenges. Obviously, the terrain, and then getting into the sidewalk. Anytime that we try to excavate in this area, I think what happens is that already steep slope becomes even steeper. So that is one of the challenges. I think, obviously, this is open for discussion. We have a number of challenges like the grading. Of course, sidewalk might be something to be discussed if it and also drainage. So all those things are items that we intend to discuss with the town city engineer and try to come up with some kind of resolutions.
Okay, so you're working on that
Yes.
proposal? Okay, and with the drainage too, because a lot of drainage goes down into Old Town now off of that site, right? Or down, particularly off that wash, I guess.
Yeah. So actually, like I mentioned, the concept, maybe it's not a significant amount, but any contribution from this area is now going to be reduced because this contribution in this area would have come to Verde Heights and Pima, and then it would kind of from there onwards, find their own way. Now, a couple of things that we've done over time, the alleyway that we designed some time ago has more capacity than what it used to have. So there are a couple of options. We might not be able to fix everything, but I think there's going to be some positive impacts by combining some of these existing developments.
Okay. Any questions on grading or drainage?
Thank you.
I guess I just want to chime in though that regardless of if a solution isn't found to allow public traffic or public access or foot traffic there, the public will find their own solution. Like, yeah, I know there's curb there, we're gonna try and discourage people from walking on the pavement, but if there's not an option behind the curb, they will take the option wherever they can, and that's pretty well documented in a lot of, you could put a sidewalk someplace, and if there's a shorter way, people will find the shorter way regardless of the sidewalk location. So I would just make sure that something is discovered, because if not, somebody will discover something.
We had a meeting with city engineer, with Barron, with Scott, with Richard Faust, this one. And I'm going to say about 6 weeks ago, and the main discussion item was the sidewalk, curb and gutter. And like Krishan said, this portion of Verde Heights Drive, the slope is so steep here, it comes into the right-of-way.
Yep.
It's not, it doesn't end in in Maynard's property. And to put a sidewalk, we can get curb and gutter in there, but to put a sidewalk and then a planting area, because the code asks for not only the sidewalk, but a 10-foot planting area adjacent to the sidewalk, is that retaining wall could be 20 feet tall. And the cost of it, and it's not only right here, it extends down into this area. We are wanting to build sidewalk, up into this area here, and then curb gutter around. But to put a sidewalk here and then dead end it to nowhere.
I know, and I understand that part of it. I'm just saying that it doesn't have to be sidewalk, but there needs to be some option for people to get there.
At that meeting that we came up with was to put a sidewalk in here.
Okay.
So hence there's a pedestrian gate here. And this sidewalk, we're putting in curb and gutter and sidewalk to our property line, allowing the public to access here. There's an ADA crosswalk here. There's a covered sidewalk through here, all ADA accessible through here, either down the stair or the incline lift to the Park. So
yes, during business hours.
During business hours. So from 9 o'clock? Sure. So at 9 o'clock in the evening, the gate would be closed.
Sure.
But during the day, during daylight hours and up until 9 p.m., the public has direct access. There was discussion about putting sidewalk, curb and gutter on this side of Verde Heights. But that's not our property. It seemed really far-fetched.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I understand deeply the situation. I drive it every day, so I got you. I'm just saying,
so we have,
if a solution isn't found, people will find one. I just wanted to get that out there.
right, I in this case, the property being fenced, This is a tough one. This is really tough along here, just because of the way the topography is.
The problem is they built that road, my wife and her family were the two first families up there living in the mid-50s.
So
When
you
they
know.
built that road, and it's never changed since then, as far as I know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever been improved in 70
and
years, 60
it-
years.
Right.
It's still there, and it's a problem I've discussed with the city. And, it goes on, clear on through the whole subdivision. I live in Verde Heights,
Yeah.
along with Vice Chairman, and we see it's become a traffic corridor. It's not just a little residential street anymore.
No, it isn't. I
And-
agree.
And with this project, since you have to come up there, we're going to draw a lot of people back up to that whole neighborhood, so.
Yes. I wanted to, I'm going to let Matt talk to you about the fence, but I wanted to talk to you about the permeable paving we're proposing for all the driving surfaces. And before I show you this sample of it, I want you to know that we did meet with the chief. He came to the office. We met with him at code review, of course. We looked at it together. We got the research to him. He was concerned about his 75,000-pound truck. This stuff is rated for 125,000 pounds. We have provided Scott with, or the city, with photographs of existing facilities, including municipal facilities that have used this now. And what this looks like is...
Can you have one of your assistants do that, and you stay at the microphone and talk? That would be great.
Otherwise, you lose me. Right. So it's called Tough Grid, and it comes in these. This is the size of the panels. It obviously lays this way. These it's put down on compacted AB, and then these cells are filled with either washed gravel, or you can grow grass in it, or you can put whatever material you like in it. As far as making, and this is their heavy-duty product, so this is the actual product. They link together, the parts and pieces link together, and then depending on if you want white stripes for parking or red stripes for fire lanes or whatever it is,
Okay.
you insert these these discs.
Disc, yeah.
Yeah. The cost is, for this material, is about, it's a little less than $2 a square foot. It's about $1.90. And then, of course, you have the installation. So, and the advantage is the permeability of it, so that it helps with detention and retention on the site. We're not creating any detention basins. The rainwater is absorbed into the natural landscape underneath. So I have this here for you, and I'd like to introduce Matt Lavore, who is Maynard's project manager, and he can talk to you about the fencing.
Hello.
Your name, sir? Your name for the record, please.
Matt Lavore.
Matt Lavore, okay,
Yes, sir.
Matt. it's on you.
Hi.
Hi again.
Yeah, this, you're probably all familiar with this. No climb horse fence. The idea was, as Maynard said, to try to keep it on those sides that run in the lesser traveled portions of the property here, to keep it to 8 feet. Everything wants to get at the grapes. And it's not going to keep out insects, but it can keep out raccoons. They're some of the worst, and the deer. So, I mean, that's why we want the 8-foot fence. I mean, grapes, that's the kind of protection they need. On this side here, on the, over here, being is that it's at the top of a steeper slope next to a road, Maynard was willing to, go with this shorter fence in through here. And just kind of try to split the difference. But but in order to make it a little more attractive, even on the backside, you know, we talked about making it iron posts instead of galvanized posts, which y'all have probably seen, and then add a top rail on there. And it's a ranch style fence with this filling the field, which it's pretty popular these days. If you're out in, Chino or, that's what people are using, and it looks pretty good. You get that top rail on there, and so it's not just a loose fence kind of flopping around. There you go. There you go. Yeah, so that's, you get more of a panel look. It's complete, it's not missing that top. So, I think right here. Yeah, and you got this material filling the field, and then like a nice top rail all the way along.
So those are steel posts?
Yeah, those are steel, like the iron posts, yeah.
Not fence posts?
Not fence posts, not the shiny galvanized, fence posts. It's like 2 3/8. But, and so this, on the backside, we're hoping for the 8-foot fence. It's not very visible, those sides. There's not much back there. If anybody has any questions?
No. Yes, Robert?
Yes, sir.
In the presentation, it says that the fence material is going to be expanded metal mesh.
Expanded metal.
Chicken wire.
Yeah, no, expanded metal is maybe what we're going to use on the gates. Yeah.
It says fence.
Want to check? I mean, that's definitely.
Fences and screens.
That's not referring to the main fence that goes along around the property. Expanded metal is like we have all seen that's a diamond
So
shaped.
this presentation is misleading.
Mind if I take a peek?
Sure.
Oh, and this right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for the HVAC screens. It's for the front gate.
Okay, so she's saying sheet L1. So this is referring to not the main fence.
Okay, well, that material I don't find anywhere in here.
Okay, well, I think that's why we brought the sample. So this is the best, there's this 2x4, there's welded wire, which is cheaper and doesn't hold up as well. So this is the stuff that we are proposing for the primary fence. The expanded metal is for the gates, in particular screening here, in certain spots, not the main body of the fence. That's going to be this stuff. In those panels, as we were looking at, posts and top rail with this stuff stretched in field.
And that's on L2, right? That also indicates in some of the 8-foot fence areas where it's going to be 8 feet will be that mesh, which is shown here.
Same.
And then a couple feet of horizontal wires, possibly electrified. That's at L2.
That's, we've in terms of the meetings we've had, the electrification is everybody's least favorite option.
Yeah, if it's needed.
Yeah, so.
You're growing nature's candy.
So I mean, it's getting 8 feet in those, like you said, and with those top, that'll discourage the climbers a lot, and the deer. So I think we could, the electrification.
Last resort.
Yeah, I mean, the raccoons will go up and over.
Yep.
They are clever.
Yeah, I was going to say,
And the skunks.
I've had experience with raccoons, and that wasn't going to stop them, even at 8 foot.
Yeah, no, they'll just keep on going.
They're very resourceful.
Would you tell them what fencing you typically use on all the vineyards?
Well, I mean, as far as like at our other vineyard, we do have an electric top. It is. Like on Del Ponte, we have this galvanized post, like you said, wires and electrification. And then we just got to fight the birds and the squirrels and the bees. But that keeps out the raccoons and the skunks. Everything wants them. Absolutely everything.
And you're only going to have one person on site?
They're not going to sleep.
Sleep during the day,
Half
right?
hour, yeah, chunks, yeah, exactly. No, it's tough. I mean, absolutely everything wants them. You know, the sugar, I mean, yeah, it's alluring. So, you know, in those discussions, as far as electrification, you know, we brought up maybe on that 8-foot section, having an electrified top wire. You know, we left it out of that 6-foot fence, kind of on the main stretch where there's potentially people. But you know, that's something that, you know, we're hoping is still a possibility if we can, you know, show it, ensure that it's safe. You know, plenty of signage and, because it is, you know, as you said, they'll go up and over, they'd probably go up and over a 12-foot fence. But, yeah, it's a, you know, I mean, being is that it's, you know, it's, you know, in the neighborhood, we'll kind of have to see, you know, what effects and how hard we have to defend. But,
The other thing about the 8-foot fence is that it's not in the public area.
Right.
So it's bounding properties that are not developed. I think John from the fire department, his house is just to the west. And I can't honestly recall if his property comes down to this boundary or is just above it, but he is actually the only person on the backs. Can you go to the site plan? He's the only person, yeah, that really has much visibility to the site, if we can get to the site plan here.
you know,
There. So his property is over here, but there's no other, so having a taller fence here with the possibility of electric wire, and here, of course, is there's no public access there at all. So I know that Maynard is obviously very concerned about protecting the vines. I mean, that's what this project is mostly about, so, is the wine. So, so that is what we're proposing at this time as far as the fencing.
We had a question about phasing. Could you go
Yes,
walk us through your phasing?
yeah. We've submitted actually a couple of letters to the city, and the first thing that needs to be done or wants to get done is the grading. So we'll call that phase 1. And so that would include the grading of this hill here on Verde Heights Drive. And that material is going to be taken around into the site and deposited in this area and in this area here. This building is not going to be on fill, but these areas on either side of it will be. And with the grading, the site utilities, we want to bring the site utilities up to the site, so sewer, water, electricity. And then the start of grading and of the vineyard. So phase 1 is, we're calling it grading, general grading of the site. This area here will be graded as well. So there's about a 6-foot material. We're going to reduce the height of this area here and take that material and push it into this area of the parking lot. So there's quite a bit of grading just in this area, having nothing to do with the vineyard planting. The second thing that we intend to do, or we'll call it Phase 2, is the winery. So Maynard wants the winery built, and in doing so, this building will be started, but right behind it will be, obviously, will be this complex here. So one is the grading, 2 is this winery, 3 is the restaurant, the wine cellar, et cetera. And with that, the parking lot has got to go in. The last bit of the project that we're proposing to do is the pocket park. So we're proposing this over a 3-year period. And generally, that's it. I gave the breakdown to Scott. I don't have the month-to-month breakdown of it, but just so you have an overall picture of how we're intending to.
It's item 7 in your LOI, it's in here, so.
Okay, great. And I think we're proposing that the grading start in March, this March 2020, this coming year. So we're going to put some pressure on Krishan to get that done. And while the grading's going on, we're going to work on the construction drawings for the winery, and we're going to work on the construction drawings for the entire project, but with the intent of permitting this building first.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir, yes.
2 quick questions.
Yes, that's fine.
During the manufacturing process, making wine, is there going to be any noise generated from the processing of the grapes? And I mean, obviously during construction, but just after the winery is built, can you address what type of noise levels there would be?
Well, it's seasonal, so August through, halfway through September, that's kind of what we call the crush season. That's when grapes are going to be coming in. That's when there's going to be some machinery.
So that's
going.
Loud kind of?
No, I wouldn't say it is loud. No, it's all electric. So it's not like big motors running. The forklifts are electric. All the winery equipment's electric.
Okay.
So it's in terms of like a manufacturing process, it's relatively quiet.
Pretty quiet.
Yeah.
Second question, you're going to have a winery. I was just curious whether or not you're going to have a lot of tourism, tour buses, and if so, how have you planned for the parking of large buses and vehicles in your parking plan?
Well, I think, the big buses would probably roll in there and drop off people. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about kind of what is going to, at least in...
Yeah, I know that in one of the meetings we had, the public is not going to be allowed into the winery. But the wine cellar is a different animal. This building here, the public will be able to see into and be invited into by invitation into the cellar itself. So there would be some wine tasting there. There is no wine tasting going on here other than the employees doing it.
Well, the reason why I ask, because, other wineries in the valley have tour buses coming up from Phoenix, and they visit the wineries, and I think that's what it's about. So I was just wondering, how are you going to accommodate that type of activity if you don't have parking for large buses?
Well, it's never been we've never sort of actively advertised and sought that particular kind of, it's not a huge piece of what we do. So to this point, it hasn't been like a big discussion. Now, if the manager of the restaurant or got a call and there's a big tour bus coming, we'd have to probably work it out on a case by case. It's well, we don't have big, huge bus parking. We could tell them, okay, this is the time that's the least busy. You can come here and there's probably going to be a spot where you can take up multiple spots and park there while you take your tour through. But I guess to your question, it hasn't been a huge a part of our business overall. The tour
Okay.
aspect of that.
Just last question, and
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, you're going to have 4,000 vines, you said, right?
Yeah.
How many acre feet of water does that require a year?
I'd have to, I do have a piece of paper, and I can get you that information
I
off
was
the
just
top of my
wondering how
head.
much of it comes from the town, how much of it do you estimate would come from
From catchment?
capturing?
Yeah, we're gonna have to,
rainwater?
we could, we'd have to look at kind of annual rainfall, we'd have to look at the square footage that we're catching, and then, but predominantly, I think, the majority of the water that's gonna water those vines is gonna be from the town.
What's your guess on the acre feet?
I have it in my head right now that an acre foot per acre, but I could be wrong. I have notes for that, I don't have them with me, as far as water use.
What I do know is that the vines are probably watered twice a week. Each vine takes about 3 gallons of water per watering.
During the peak.
12,000 gallons a week.
Well, it depends on precipitation, just during like monsoon. And then, of course, that's during, we've got that intensive season when they're leafing and when they're fruiting. And the rest of the time, it's a bare minimum. So it's just.
And the water that we will be using from the city will be recycled water. It's not groundwater.
You have that commitment now, or?
Yes.
Yeah, we're using their, yep.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's that, it's a seasonal, it's hard to predict, in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
Like this year, it would have been a little more because we didn't have hardly any rain.
So you're not putting any wells in then, of your own? No.
No, the intent is to have a separate water meter just for irrigation for the vineyard. The catchment off the roof, we figured, based on the size of those tanks, will really only suffice for the site landscaping, so the decorative landscaping, but not for the vineyard. So there's just not enough roof surface there, or it's just, that's not a possibility.
Nor just reliability.
Or reliability. So it will be a separate water meter, separate water line for the recycled water that comes up that's going to go, and that'll end up the meter, and that line is heading towards this building, not that building. So there'll be another meter for domestic water, which will serve the restaurant.
What would be your preferred route for your service trucks entering and leaving the site? Would they be from 89A, or would you route them through?
Oh, if they're like coming from the south, like if they're, I
From any direction.
Yeah, I mean, they'd predominantly be coming on 260, and into town and through town, and probably not over 89.
Not over 89.
We never recommend that.
That's not a good idea because of that neighborhood that they would have to go through.
No, and plus, just coming over 89, that's not ever anything I would ever recommend to a truck.
No, I believe he's specifically talking about access to this site, not necessarily over the mountain, but he's asking about.
No, that's right. Yeah. So you just when it splits. No, I think we would guide them. I think we would guide them, through Old Town if we could, and not through Verde Heights.
Yeah, you wouldn't want through Verde Heights, right?
That would be. It's just not. I mean, like you said, it's just kind of not meant for that.
No.
And it's just more intuitive. Just stay on 89 all the way into Old Town, take a turn.
Can that activity of trucks be governed by the people who run the winery? In other words, you have vendors who would come on a regular basis.
Right.
Can they be directed by your business to use certain routes and not to use certain routes?
Absolutely. Yeah, if
You would do that?
anybody's there on a regular basis, they would just, that's the way they would come, and that's the way they would, that'd be it.
So
And
you
whenever
folks-
we would, yeah,
So you would commit to do that?
I think our people who are working there, who are working with these vendors, could say, here's the route. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
That's
Hopefully you work with Google to GPS it that way, too.
Well, see, and that sometimes is the problem. It becomes a fight because there's GPS, even though you gave them different directions. If it takes them down Verde Heights, that's.
I know.
But no, I think we could make a serious dent in terms of the delivery by just letting people know you come in,
That'd be good.
There is no other way to access that site either. I mean, whether, and when you look at the topography of the whole property, this is it's the only way to get in. You just can't get in any other way. And then, so if we could have gotten in here, we would have. That's for sure.
I know, but sometimes you have 18-wheelers trying to go through Jerome sometimes, and they get hung up. And
No, and for some reason, somehow they snuck right through the,
yeah, they get.
like, I don't know why, no. But I mean, so yeah, they'd be coming up Pima
Okay.
up pretty high.
Commissioner Hart, do you have any number of questions to our resident architect?
What is the nature of the expanded metal mesh? Is it a
Expanded metal
big? Is it a big diamond?
No.
Small diamond?
1.25 by 3/4.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's used for like decking on trailers sometimes, or
Is it going to be powder coated or?
no, it'd be probably rusted. So
Okay, now,
just like a nice.
considering this
Cement.
rust, is this going to be like Core-10, or is it going to be real rust?
Or raw. So Core-10, right, it has.
In other words, it's a coating that looks like rust,
No.
or is it going to be real rust?
Rust. A coating that looks like rust. That stuff, I mean, I know what you're talking about, and that's, I mean, it's, Core-10 steel will rust. It's got a different.
Yes, but after a certain point in time, it stops.
That's right. It's more orangey. It's more of an orangey rust, and like the raw steel is more, kind of gets more brown.
We're proposing, whatever steel we're going to leave natural on the buildings or on the site for it to naturally rust. And so we're not proposing factory coated finish on it.
Well, I'm just concerned with a safety issue of people coming in contact, because if it rusts, eventually it's going to rust out. It's going to deteriorate and then present sharp edges and such to people who are adjacent to them.
Yeah.
I think this, I mean, certainly the trusses, the pipe columns, the things that are exposed that people may be able to even get near, will last longer than my life and your life put together. But I think the expanded metal, I understand where you're coming from. Expanded metal has sharp edges, doesn't have a bull-nosed edge on it. We were planning to use it up high for the HVAC screens on the roofs. And then the other place was at the front gate. And if we're willing to look at another material there, we would like it to be a rusted material, but also some small openings or perforations in the material, something you can see through. So something not solid.
I'm just looking at it in terms of over time. If it's just regular steel rusting, it begins to present a health issue, a safety issue to the people around it, especially if you're putting it on a gate that the pedestrians are going to be using.
I think in terms of my experience of working with that stuff, which I have, I mean, it would be decades, and you could replace it at that point. I mean, if your gate in this very sort of arid, and it's up on a gate, it's not coming into contact with kind of persistent moisture, it would last for decades. And then you could replace it. If you saw an issue happening, if you saw corrosion happening to the point like you're saying of like jagged edges, at that point, I think we'd be happy to get.
So you would have a continuing maintenance program
30, 40 years
set
out
in
of the
place.
gate, and it's like, okay, we can, things deteriorate and do need to be replaced. So in my opinion, I mean, the expanded metal would last a good long time. I mean, it's not lightweight stuff. It's pretty beefy. And so I think it would be a long time before it became a threat to somebody in like.
Well, I was just thinking, have you considered maybe using some of the vinyl-coated expanded metal mesh.
Yeah, that, I know what you're talking about. It's just, I think it boils down to like an aesthetic. That stuff has a kind of a plasticky look. You know, it just doesn't, in terms of what we're trying to do and the kind of the feel that we're trying to have. But I mean, like Rennie said, I mean, you know, if people feel like that's an issue, then we could look at some other materials.
Well, I think it's something you should consider.
Yes.
At one point, you said there wasn't going to be any crushing of the grapes, but there is.
Yes, there is.
Okay, so that, the grapes are going to be
Yeah,
on.
I don't believe, I never said there would not be crushing.
He was talking about something else.
Is it I'm sorry, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
You were specifically talking about the winery, more of the display area, I believe.
Yes.
Was not going to have crushing
Okay,
taking place
the
there.
grapes aren't going to be crushed there, but they are going to be crushed on site.
Yeah, on the roof.
Nothing.
So you're not going to be putting them on trucks, taking them somewhere else, and they're, okay,
See this spot
correct.
right here? This is like barrel storage. He was talking about this. There's no processing of grapes there. It all happens here.
Okay. Considering the Xerox plants that are listed in your site landscaping, when I researched that, I found that they like light, which we've got plenty of, but they also require a rich and moist soil. So are you planning on reconditioning the soil where you're putting in the
It depends on-
Xerox plants?
It depends on the plant. So the holes that will be dug for the new plants, some of them will have some treated soil, such as compost or some other amendments, but we're not planning on doing any kind of mass replacement of soil.
Well, it's just that the soil that we have here isn't really good
Well,
for
the Xeric-
anything other than native
Yeah, the
plants.
xeric plants that we proposed are on your plant list, and so we're working with that.
Okay. Can I suggest now?
Sir.
Considering the area along Verde Heights Drive where it's steep, have you considered the use of coyote bush? It's a low ground cover. It has a really great root system. It's drought tolerant, and it's also decomposed granite tolerant.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
It's fire resistant also. One of the other great things
All
about
right,
it.
great. I'll look into it.
Yeah, it's just a suggestion. Take a look at it. You might want, because like I said, it has a really great root system. And I think that with the steep slope that you've got there, having something with extensive roots to hold the soil in place would be really useful. And, yeah, when I look at the elevations of the slopes, one of the things that I see is a lot of gray concrete. Is there going to be any texture to that concrete to give any relief? Or is it just going to be gray, flat concrete?
It's going to be natural concrete. We looked into a Riverside white concrete, but we can't really get it any longer. So I did a couple of buildings here some years ago, back in the 80s, with Riverside white. That's Oxendale's, some of Oxendale's buildings we did back when Valley Concrete was still here. And we were able to get Riverside white concrete, so it's a white Portland cement.
Well,
We
I was
could dye
thinking
the
more in terms of texture. It's
In
just
terms of
flat.
texture, yes, we're planning to use standard forms. We're not, at this moment, we're not planning to do a corrugated look to it, for example, or a textured wood look to it necessarily. So,
It's just an awful lot of flat gray concrete. And when I look at it on the elevations,
yeah,
it's pretty impressive, at least to me.
Particular angle you're thinking of?
Well, like that one right there.
You're talking about the retaining walls?
Yeah, the retaining walls.
Oh, I understand.
we could, yeah, I mean, there's, we felt this was a much, I mean, we've got to deal with the slope. We
Well,
could
no, I
look
think
in-
the idea of the retaining walls and stepping it is a
we could
really
look-
excellent
We could
idea.
look into a textured form, a board that'll give the concrete a texture. We'll look into that.
There's also a way you can pull forms and spray it and get like a little bit of aggregate
Yes.
surface. You know, that's something we can look at.
Yeah,
Well, just something to, like I said, to give some relief.
right.
Yeah, honestly, we felt that the plants, the vines that are in front of them, were going to do that for us, but I'm happy to look into.
It's true, these are 5 foot? So they're 5 foot, so these vines quickly are gonna be obscuring these walls.
So you're
Vines in that
thinking,
photo are 3 feet tall, and they're not that tall very long.
okay,
They're
so,
getting to here, like right now.
so you're thinking that it's going to pretty much, the plants themselves are going to camouflage.
You won't even see those walls after 2 years.
You know, and to your point, the vines do lose their leaves, so I'm not trying to
Yes.
make it like everything's going to be disguised in a few years. But even when they lose their leaves, you will see the concrete behind them, but it will be somewhat obscured. But I'll look into a different form or what's available and what's, you
If you
know,
could, please. that
we
would-
will.
Yes.
One other question. Why the wisteria instead of grapevines, since this is a vineyard?
So we originally proposed grapevines through the central walkway there. And Maynard said, no, I don't want that. And one of the things he wanted something flowering along that walkway, something that had an aroma. And what happens, there's a place, Los Poblanos in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, that I was too recently looking at for this project. And they have a walkway with a steel trellis and grapevines on it. And the problem with that is when the grapes fall off the vine, they stain people's
Yes.
clothes or
Yes.
the sidewalk.
And, yeah,
And so, for that reason also, we changed it to more of a flowering vine.
okay,
They
all
just
right.
take a lot of management, the grapevines.
Well, it's just that,
Messy, too.
Messy. Like a mulberry.
for those who've spent some time in the Middle East, where they also have a very enthusiastic participation by the sun during the day, one of the most effective solutions I observed was trellises with grapevines. They work really great for reducing.
It does provide shade.
Yeah, it's great shade, and it really cuts down on, the solar heat load on the sides of buildings and such. But the wisteria will do well, and I understand
Yeah.
okay,
They also
thanks.
talked about jasmine there too,
Yeah.
which is, it's going to be, the jasmine potentially could be actually provide more shade because it's more of an evergreen.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dow.
You guys are doing a great job of, using recycling and that kind of stuff. My question is there any thought of solar, even on the winery portion? I saw the flat roof and I thought,
Yeah, before we were finished with these drawings, Maynard said, I want PV panels on the roof of the winery. So it is definitely something that we want to move towards, although these drawings aren't depicting it. They would not be visible except if you're in an airplane from the street or actually from walking anywhere around the site because of the winery you could see that big flat roof.
yeah.
So this big flat roof here. So that's the area that we are starting to look at adding PV panels.
Okay. Employees, how many employees do we think that this is going to run a day? And then we get to the question of where do they park?
Yeah.
Do you transport them there?
No. I mean,
Okay.
I imagine they would, it's not, you talk, okay, so like winery.
Yeah, well, I saw the winery. That was pretty self-explanatory, but
Yeah, that's
how many,
kinda
I mean,
seasonal.
it looks like a pretty good-sized restaurant, and then
Yeah.
and you got some other things there, and that could,
I mean, so
20
you're
employees.
talking like
you're
a
gonna-
half dozen cars,
Okay.
at peak. It would be, and then a lot of the employees we have live in Old Town.
Okay.
They'd walk. So, it would, I'd say a half dozen, and they would just park kind of in those far spots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're over the parking requirements by probably 13 or 14 cars.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we did that is Scott looked at the drawings and said, you're proposing 2 employees or something, and you got a lot more than that, so.
They're very hardworking.
They're very hardworking, but we increased the parking beyond the requirements. And then, so we expanded the parking lot more towards the entrance and added about 12 or 13 cars.
Okay, that was my question. Was the parking number process for that?
Yes, some of it was for the realistic number of employees.
Okay.
I'm thinking there could be 10 or 12 employees.
All right.
Commissioner Dow, their parking estimates on here accommodate 11 employees.
Okay.
So that is factored into their numbers. And that's just for the restaurant. The other uses don't require parking per employee.
Okay. I don't have the same concerns as he does about the cement retaining walls, the higher ones. I guess if I was going to say that the retaining wall needed to have something, it would be the bottom one, because the grapes obviously aren't going to be blocking that bottom wall. So if I had to commit to fixing fixing to the wall, I would say, let's concentrate on the bottom side where those plants that, the landscape that we're not going to be blocking have something other than that. Obviously, the wine,
So
the vines are going to take care of those upper ones, but that bottom one would be my major concern.
So one of the things we did in the pocket park, this retaining wall here is river rock. We originally had it in concrete, we changed it to river rock. And then above this retaining wall, along the barrier of the patio is a river rock retaining wall railing as well. So we've added river rock for that exact reason. But we could look at this lower retaining wall here. We could look at maybe a different texture to the concrete.
Again, depending on what your landscaping was, I don't know.
Yeah, we do have landscaping.
Could be something, yeah. Maybe you're right at the top part of that wall.
Yeah.
Visible.
My next concern is I completely understand the shade for the pocket park and why it's going to take a while for a tree to grow to where it was actually useful. However, is there a way to incorporate some trees amongst those so as the trees mature, you could start to remove some of those other ones? You understand what I'm trying to get at?
Oh, yeah.
Like a tree in between the middle there, so as it grows out, you could potentially remove that because we are Cottonwood. Trees are what we are. So, I mean, that, in my preference, I think trees would be a better shade.
Yeah, we could, right now, we have these 3 planters here, here, and here. And then we have the center planter, which is really the main structure that's holding up, the cables for this, for these sails. We could look at, we do have these planted, but not in trees, but we could look at these 3 areas. We do have street trees along here, here, and then, of course, street trees going up Verde Heights. So we're not short on trees, but we could look at the possibility of adding something.
Even if it was just a few to maybe reduce the, the shade structure. Just a thought. I mean, I understand why you went to this.
Yeah.
No, you're talking, it's like, it's the non-organic, the thing is, and so getting something in there that's leafy and.
We did look at that, I gotta tell you.
Yeah,
We looked at it pretty,
There's no
looked at it
doubt,
pretty hard.
there's no doubt in my mind you did, because this is unbelievable. But just a thought, just my thought.
We spent really a lot of time, and what we found is that not only would we wait a number of years for the shade, it wouldn't be effective in the winter necessarily unless they were conifers. And then that's kind of like, do we want a bunch of pine trees in there that really don't provide what you need?
Bessie.
Well, there could have been some live oak or something else, but
I get it.
we tried that as the first option.
Okay.
Yeah.
And last question, because I'm ignorant to this, how long does it take from the time you plant the grapes to production? Like we're actually using them?
Like you're making wine from those grapes.
Yeah.
The shortest possible time is 3 years. And you will get something in 3 years, you just won't get like full, like that, 1.5 tons with the way we crop, per acre. Usually you reach full crop tonnage by 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Getting back to the landscape plan, as you're going down the driveway, as you're going up the driveway towards the restaurant.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Are those cypress trees?
Those are Italian cypress.
Okay.
And the logic for those was, I wanted people to have the experience of driving through a vineyard. It's almost like, I went to school in Italy, and you go down some of these old driveways, and they're lined in a lot of them are Italian cypress.
Right.
And I wanted to reproduce that experience as you drive into the parking lot, and you're driving amongst the grapes as well as these Italian cypress trees.
Okay.
So we had other choices,
Right.
but this is,
I think that looks really nice.
that was the reasoning.
In terms of like some of the trees have you actually selected any specific tree to be planted? I know there are a number of different trees on the palette on the list. They're acceptable in the city of Cottonwood, but I wasn't sure if there were any specific trees that you've already selected for that.
Honestly, we're still working on it.
You're still, okay.
This was a lot to put
You've done
together.
a phenomenal job.
Put together, not that I'm exhausted, but it's like, it was.
We've covered so much, and I mean in great detail. I think you've done a great job, so it's just a matter of ironing a lot of things out. But if I could make a recommendation for a specific tree to even look at it, it's a beautiful tree. It's a Chinese pistache.
Yeah.
And I think it's on one of the lists in Cottonwood, in terms of selecting. It's drought tolerant. It's beautiful in the fall. We have one in our yard, and it's gorgeous.
I know we haven't really, we just very generalized the plant palette for this presentation, but obviously when we come back for permits, we're going to have to give you an exact palette. And
one other question about the fence down by the pocket park, just a curved fence, is that?
That's a steel welded steel railing you could see from the drawing here. So,
which looked different, so
yeah,
it's very nice.
we are painting that. We're painting all the railings white. So these railings, the railings going up the staircase, some of the railings up on top here are welded steel painted white. We're not rusting them for one of the reasons that you said, that if you run your hand across a rusted steel railing, you look at your hand and you've got a bunch of rust on your hand. So
you've done a great job.
Mr. Norwood, is there further
Good,
questions?
I'm all finished.
You're all finished.
Yeah, it's great, it's fabulous.
Mr. New Vice Chairman.
All right, okay, overall, I'm very impressed with it. It's a fantastic presentation and project. Born and raised here in Jerome, so I've always known that as the lodge, and I actually owned the house I owned the house on the other point across from it and stared at it for many days. So I'm glad to see something's coming of it. I will look at a question regarding the public access, public pedestrian access through the site. Will there be some sort of a legal agreement done up with that, like a public-private partnership for things? I just want to make sure that that's thought about or at least mentioned, because if you're going to have the public walking through there, there may be, I just want to make sure that that's something that's in everybody's mind, as far as liability with the city and with the property owner, and if the property owner is ready to accept the liability for the public walking through his property. You know, I just want to bring that up.
I think, you know, with that, and when we discussed that at,
Because it's not like a public right-of-way, it's private property,
Yeah.
so.
when we discussed that at Robert's office, it was, I mean, if the public isn't on this property, he's in trouble. Maynard's in trouble, because he's not selling
Oh, sure.
food or wine or
Sure.
or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
so I don't know that there would be a problem with some kind of agreement, but it's just natural to the project that the public needs to walk
Yes, and I wasn't
or
trying
get
to.
onto that property some way or another.
It was just a question that came into my head. I wanted to mention it so that it was at least mentioned. I didn't mean to cause any trouble or problems.
It's not, no, not,
Okay.
Jesse, Jesse, it's not a problem.
Okay.
But maybe Scott wants to talk to that, I don't know.
And that may be something that goes through the evolutionary process of this, but.
It's, you know, I mean, it's, if you're public, you know, you're coming onto the property.
Yeah.
And you're, right, and
Sure, yeah, I agree.
Liability insurance.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, I
gonna have
just-
insurance,
well,
right?
He's hoping
I
that
sat
more
up here,
people,
but
he's
I-
hoping more people walk through that property.
Yes,
because
I agree. I sat up, where Mr. Dowell is sitting, I sat there for 5 years on the city council with the lawyer right across the way. So I just, that came into my head to say, hey, those public-private things come up and it's an issue. I don't know. But that sort of does dovetail with another concern I have, and I don't want to be a broken record. But if we look at the phasing process of this, if I'm not mistaken, the phasing has putting curb and gutter in around pretty soon, which is around June of 2020. And then it doesn't have the pocket park in place until near the very end of January 2022. So what I'm getting at there was sort of like my first statement, where if you don't solve it, they will. So we're going to be putting curb and gutter on there, and unless we have some alternative, they're not going to be able to pass through the public access, which is being graciously provided, with the lift and that. So what I'm saying is there's going to be a gap of 2 or 3 years where it's undefined.
yeah. So, no, so, but there wouldn't be people trying to access the site because it's not
Sure.
open yet to the.
Yes.
public.
Great, yeah, I agree. And that's what I'm saying, is that won't be open for the people to use the public pathway through the site, so that their
Right.
only option will be to use Verde Heights Drive, which pretty quickly will have curb and gutter put in on it,
Right.
which was, as far as I understand from the LOI and the staff letter, the addition of curb and gutter was, I think, at least the reasoning I saw there was to discourage people from walking in the street. So I'm just simply saying that we're going to have a 2 or 3 year window where people are being discouraged from walking in the street, but also not allowed to go through the project because it's not completed. So I'm just saying we have a little black hole there where we're going to have people walking in the street. And I just want to make sure that that's.
But also, Jess, it's, I mean, the curb and gutter is directing drainage.
Yes.
It's so, as you well know, but this is a large project.
Oh, definitely.
It cannot be built in 1 year.
No, I understand that.
And so that 3-year window, that's a very tight schedule to put all this in place for what's there today. So I don't know how to condense that.
And I don't mean, unintentionally perhaps was unfairly putting the onus upon you guys completely. But I just do want it to be known that I believe it will be an issue that could be, I mean, I don't expect you guys to solve it, because it's not an easy problem to solve. I think the city has to have some responsibility with it too. I'm just pointing out that I believe there could be an issue there that could be that could be a safety issue, because already in Old Town, the parking and pedestrian traffic is very, very tough and exciting. So I just would not want to have somebody get injured on Verde Heights Drive because
We're open to any suggestions. We're open
I honestly
to,
don't have a great, I can't really give you many suggestions from
but I
here.
mean, as we progress.
Sure.
If somebody
Gotcha.
has
I will,
thoughts, some other,
I will stop belaboring the point. I just wanted to get it out there for discussion. So other than that, I'm very happy with the timeline you guys have. I can tell what you got to do here. You are pushing that timeline, and I appreciate it, because I don't want to run into a system like we have, an issue like we had with the item prior to yours, where somebody comes back for 3 years of extensions and doesn't do anything. You guys have handled that masterfully, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate the project.
On your, one of the requirements, the code requirement is putting in landscaping along the street. You're going to do that most of the way up until, or a long ways up, right?
we're going to do it all the way to about here.
Yeah, all right. Could that be traded off for a pathway? I would rather see a pathway than requiring landscaping, some trees along. You're going to have those vineyards up there. Has anybody thought about that, that area?
We did talk about that at Robert's office that day, and the discussion ended because the path ended right here. And then how do you get people who start up this, or go, who start up this way, and then what do? Then hop over the curb and gutter and walk in the street until they get here, and then they get back.
I guess my idea is, from that point on, about how many feet are you talking about? You've eliminated, we talked about having to put retaining walls all the way down or whatever. Now you have maybe 150 feet?
No, it's more than that. Oh, it's
Well, there's
quite a bit
there's
more.
no retaining walls on that section.
No, but I mean from that point up to where your driveway
From
is
here
going to
to
be.
about here, it's right here is where the grade really starts to climb.
Right.
And in fact, it's so steep, we can't put a fence in here. So the fence is going up high on this, right up here, up on the more flat ground, and then the fence is coming down here. You could see this fence line right here. So that area, I don't know, it's several hundred feet.
The other thing we discussed too is that, if you're walking and you're in here somewhere and you're trying to get to here, you're gonna go like that. To walk all the way along here. And
Oh, no, I'm talking about, we have a number of people. I have kids and grandkids.
And
They love to walk and run. I live in Verde Heights,
Right.
Palo Verde Street.
Right.
Every morning that they're visiting or whatever, they're hiking down that road. They don't drive it. They want to go to Old Town and go to the Old Town Trail, whatever. They're going up and down that street, which is dangerous as it is right now.
Yeah.
Even that early, sometimes early in the morning. This is a major project. This is going to be Cottonwood's Tlaquepaque in my, hopefully. But it's going to draw a lot of people and a lot more traffic. And that road's even going to get a bit more dangerous. I think this is, because the code, as I understand it, and Robert's not here, and Rudy maybe can, is when these new projects go in, we normally require curb and gutter and a sidewalk. Like we did with the senior project over on Candy Lane and
Mingus.
Mingus, yeah. I mean, that's typically, and we have looked at some of the properties. We've had some in areas where, there's no other, it's a secondary street within a subdivision. It's got rolled, just curb gutter. But this is even though it's not designated as of Main Collector Street is a major street in our town, and will become more with this project. It's going to already make it, because you got to come up and drive into that. That's the only way you can get to that property.
Right.
And I just think this is the opportunity we need to take very seriously about improving, and this I'm putting on the city's back to, down the road, to elevate that status, put it in their plan for street improvement. But this is an opportunity, at least for that portion, that we could get something that would give us it doesn't even have to be concrete sidewalk, I'm not saying that, but something that people can walk up and down that street without being in the street.
What I can maybe suggest or say is that this grade comes onto city property. It goes beyond our property line. So, and it comes right down to the pavement. And so if there was some, I mean, since it's on your property and our property, maybe there could be some arrangement for retaining walls that was jointly paid for. That wouldn't be all of the property owner's burden.
Right.
I don't know, and I'm not offering any of Maynard's money to anybody,
No.
but I'm just...
No, we have a stipulation, though, that number 5, the developer work with city engineer to provide appropriate and acceptable pathway from the top of Verde Heights Drive to the intersection of Verde Heights Drive and Pima, as a stipulation of our approval tonight. Now, it doesn't dictate exactly what that is, and I understand you're looking at the options. I'm just trying to look at some other options. I'd rather sacrifice a few small trees and some bushes down below for a pathway, at least up that far, and then maybe work with the city and our city managers and the council and whatever in budget office to see what we can do to get that, because it's going to happen now, or it's probably not going to happen. So that's my concern. I have a real reservation. It's a great project. I'm excited about it. But I'm also a resident of that area, and
I understand your concern.
And so, we know it's going to be, that's fine, but that street, like I say, was built 70 years ago, and it's something desperately needs to be done with this development, because you got a major, we're not talking about just a little residential project up in here, we're talking a major commercial project.
Yes, and I mean, I know we'll be open to further discussion.
All right.
I know that's the way Scott has made his recommendation to you, that we would continue to negotiate and try to find an amicable solution.
And I'll be happy to put some pressure on the city personally.
I'm sure you, in your planning on the site, I'm sure you must have worked out what you felt the cost would be to improve that section that Mr. Chairman's talking about. So what number did you come up with?
We actually didn't. It was so, it felt so out of the realm of possibility, given the situation there. And also the fact that that first project 3 years ago that was presented to you with the PA, that 24-foot retaining wall was scary.
Yes.
And we're going to end up with a 16 or 18 or 20-foot retaining wall there if we try to put a sidewalk in there. And it's something I wasn't willing to reproduce. So I did not calculate the footage and the height and the grading, et cetera, at this point. So I don't have a number for you for it. It was just so...
You mind if I interject?
Yes.
This has been brought up at several times when we were talking at the leadership team. I think it's something that probably we can continue discussing as far as anything, any possibilities, any other options that we have. But at this point in time, you really have to look at, there is already an access point, and that's from the entryway, the path all the way through the facility, all the way down to the backside.
Yeah, but during business hours, though.
Excuse me?
During business hours.
Correct, and then we need to just figure out what we need to do on the other end.
Right.
I think we've discussed this before, but I don't think we've come to a final conclusion as far as what we're going to do with that particular sidewalk and curb and gutter on that side. So
Right.
is it something that we can probably still continue discussing?
Yes, that's why it is a stipulation. in
There is a
If they
stipulation
choose to
in there.
approve it, that those
Yeah.
talks continue prior to issuance. of the
I
building
just want to
permit.
emphasize,
Something is resolved.
both to the developer and to the city, the importance of this and the timing on it, because it's, you don't do it, it's never going to get done in many years, and that's unfortunate. And I think it's just an opportune time for everybody to get their heads together and see what can be done for the city and the
Certainly, I think it's
residents.
something we can continue discussing and
That's
figuring
good.
out with a
That's fine.
reasonable solution.
That's fine. That's all I'm looking at is, continue to do it.
Agreed.
Agreed. All right. That was my, the other concern. Yeah, from the original design, I was very turned off with just concrete. And they were embellishing the beauty of that building that was up there. That's the ugliest building in Cottonwood. It was never painted, just pure old concrete cinder block, so I like the idea you're going to incorporate it, but you are going to paint it.
Absolutely.
And with reference to Commissioner Hart's suggestion, I would really suggest looking at those retaining walls, at least particularly that bottom one, giving it some relief just so it isn't just bare concrete. I really like this new concept. This fits in with our community. The other thing was a very futuristic looking, bare bunk, something out of, I don't know where, but this really fits in with the community. I think it really, so with those are my two items. Just,
Yeah, we will, I've lived here for almost 50 years
Yes.
now, and I completely understand, and the intention is to make it blend in,
Right.
not be something that, I don't want my name on, and so we're
No.
doing our best.
No,
and
no,
we want everything to work,
Right.
so everybody is as
Right.
happy as
Well, that was a good decision that was made to get you involved, and I think that much more. Okay, I don't have any other questions of these gentlemen. I have a gentleman who would like to talk from the public. Chris Renowski? Yes, Chris, come on up, sir. How you doing, sir?
My name is Chris Renowski, and I'm a local here, I have my business here, and I just thought we'd come and talk about some of the things that I saw in this project. And I want to commend Rennie for doing such a good job with the proportions of the buildings, the detail to the buildings. I think it fits in. I'm also the chairman of the Historic Commission. I'm not speaking for them, I'm speaking for myself. I think you've kind of tied that in, and like you said, from the previous project,
Right.
This is a much more palatable design. But I did have some concerns about the project, and you guys have talked about most of them. And one would be that sidewalk. I know I've done this project here on Yavapai Street and Main Street, and the solution we came to on that with the sidewalk is we're going to put the sidewalk on the other side of the street. And that was something with the engineering department, we reached, and we were a little concerned about that because of all the engineering costs it would have taken to survey that part of the road, somebody else's property, and design the curb and gutter. But the city said that they would do the engineering, the curb and gutter, and all we had to do was the sidewalk because we were doing the curb and gutter on our side. So there was kind of a good compromise that we came to. So I think you could reach a compromise there. Water usage. I did a little research on this. I'm not an expert on vines and stuff, but I thought of going on the internet and spent about 3 or 4 hours looking. And basically what the grapes used is about 500 gallons per vine a year in this type of climate. And that's about, with 4,000 plants, that's about 2 million gallons of water. And I thought it should be something that they talked about using reuse water, that it should be part of the plan that all the vines are done with reuse water. I know there's a new plant there in Riverfront Park. I don't know how much it would cost to pipe the water to there, but it could also be done in trucks, which would be, you know, a little more expensive, but over time, but not as expensive up front. You know, they could have the tank there that they fill up every day or every couple days. I'm also concerned about the traffic on Verde Heights Road. I think 75 parking places or 76 parking places there is way too short for the type of business that is. I know the people that run the businesses down there in Old Town get a lot more traffic than most of the other businesses in Cottonwood. And I've been here 40 years. We used to always joke that somebody drove a car and towed a car because it seems like every parking lot we did, it was filled up and there was no place for the customers because all the employees were there. Right. So I think another good idea might be that have signs on Verde Heights Road saying no through commercial traffic. I think that's going to be important because the other thing I'm concerned about is I never heard anything in the project about what the capacity for this processing plant is going to be. And I could only guess, but I would think that they're probably going to bring in 5 times as many grapes as they're growing here to process through this plant to make it viable. I don't, do you guys have an idea about that?
Yeah. I have a specific thought, but there are other vineyards that Maynard owns that grapes will be processed here. This is not only, you don't spend that kind of money to build a winery to process 4,000 plants. So there will be grapes, as Matt said, during harvest, mostly during August, that will be trucked in here. And that is the purpose of the building. So it's, this isn't, you know, an island into itself in terms of the production. You know, I'll let Chris finish.
No, I just wanted to make that.
Okay, Chris, just get the remarks to us.
Yeah, because I think it's important for that neighborhood. I mean, already, you know, the traffic through there is increased, and yes. I just drove through it again today just to reorient myself. Sorry. But, I mean, it is a small street, and it's not really a through street. You know, it's a 25-mile-an-hour street, and what I don't think that neighborhood needs is a lot of truck traffic and a lot of traffic from this facility going back and forth through there. And an easy way to handle that would be to have coming out of this facility is left turn only. So people don't go through Verde Heights when they're leaving it. And then having the signs on either side of Verde Heights that says, you know, no commercial traffic, so you don't get the truck traffic. And they're just easy solutions and just good ideas. And I'm glad you brought the fences up because when I looked at the plans, I didn't see the fences. And I think there's some decisions to be made there. At my house, I know to keep the animals away, I use hair. You go to a, and I was doing it for the coyotes, but it kept all the deer away too, and I was like, it was a mistake. But another thing I think that wasn't really pointed out was all the arbors that are going to be built to hang the grapes on.
Yeah,
I didn't see any drawings of that, and I thought that would be an important issue that would be something that you guys could look at. I think there's only one more thing. And I think that's about it. I wanted to make it short and sweet. I didn't want to sit here and complain about things. I think it's a great project. You know, Rennie handled this better than I could have imagined. I'm glad that the clients here are going to put the money in the Cottonwood. And I just think that a few little tweaks here and there would really make this a real asset to the community.
Sure. Good suggestion. Thank you, sir. Rainey, you want to get up and address some of these concerns?
Yeah, I
Like
want
the gray water, are you going to pipe that in?
to, yeah, at this point, yeah, we're planning to bring purple pipe into the site and have a meter on the site that meters that water. And like I said earlier, first I want to thank Chris for his comments.
Yes.
So I appreciate them. And I know one architect to another, you know, we see things differently. We have Jason here in my office who's also a licensed architect, and it's, you know, when you get to that point in your career, you see things that it's good to share it. So, but all the irrigation, and as Krishan said also, the terracing is going to be done in such a way so that the bank of the terrace is back towards the hill, not downhill, so that whatever rainwater it does fall in the sky here will have more of a chance to staying where the plants are and not just sheet flow down the hill. It's, I think the suggestion of Chris as far as traffic on Verde Heights, we're certainly open to that. I mean, there will have to be some truck traffic, obviously, into the property to do what needs to be done, food service, garbage trucks, equipment, trucking to bring the grapes in and take product out. The one thing I want to point out that I did not is that case storage is not planned for this facility or this property. So there's no building here that is going to house the finished product. So that is going to happen off-site. So the finished product of the wine, some of it would be sold here, but the majority of it is going to be brought to a warehouse where the cases will be stored and then shipped. So there's no shipping per se going out of here. But I think some kind of traffic control mechanism is a reasonable idea. Maybe no left turn once you come out. I don't know what the solution is, but we're certainly happy to look at that with planning department.
Clarkdale has a nice, I noticed the other day, when you drive through Clarkdale, and you come up and right there, when you make the left turn around the park, you're coming west, there's a big sign that says, residential area, proceed with caution, you know, something.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
a
think
speed
those,
sign there, it says, you know, what is the speed, so if people are coming up.
I think those are all very simple solutions that hardly cost anything, just a little brain power to put them in place, and so I think that those are good solutions. As far as the structure that the vines are grown on, Matt can talk to you about that, but it's all, if any of you drive up to the college, up in my neighborhood up in Haskell Springs there, you can see what is going to happen. And the end posts, the cabling, how the irrigation is hung. No, at this point, we have not done any drawings of that, but it'll be standard fare for that type, for that type of growing. So, in my mind, that's that's functional, and I think that aesthetic certainly blends with this project, but is really easy to look at.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's going to be a great project. You want to make it look as good as you can.
I mean, we're promoting Arizona wine here.
Yes, that's right.
And that's the goal. So.
I was just gonna say, even in the off season when when the leaves are gone, it's just, it's wire. It's hard to see.
Yeah.
It doesn't stand out.
You
got an occasional
post. Not gonna be a glaring.
Yeah, it's not a big sort of glaring eyesore at all.
Right.
It really blends in for what it's worth.
Very good.
All right.
Any other questions before I close the floor for the members of the commission? Thank you, sir. All right, I don't have any other signed, so I'm going to close the floor to the public. And Commissioner, I'm going to start with Commissioner Hart. Your comments, or we look at this, our stipulations. Do we need to add anything?
I think this is a dramatic improvement over the last presentation. And I think it really, you guys have really done a good job of working it into the site much better than the previous presentation. I really like the idea of the pedestrian path through the site. I think the solution of the, it's not an escalator, what it? Incline lift is a much better solution than the elevators that you had before.
We were not the architects prior.
No, you were not.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that, you know, what you guys did is a lot better than what we saw before. And I think you worked really hard at solving a lot of the site problems. I really like the structure that you come up with. It's something that'll be compatible with Old Town. I assume that sidewalk is generally going to be in the 2% slope range? Generally?
Yes.
Okay. I like the way that you worked with the restaurant and working it in with the other parts of the site. Like I said, I think you guys did a really excellent job.
Mr. Dow.
I'm overly excited to see the project get on the ground and get going. I would say this, I hope the city's prepared for it, because if you build it,
yes,
they will come. So I hope we're ready as a city for this, because this is going to step it up. This is going to step up the game. We're going to go from minor league to major league here, so just my thoughts.
Commissioner.
I love the project. You did a phenomenal job. I mean, there isn't anything you really missed. It was very detailed. I really appreciate everything that you've done here. Other than a few of the little things that you kind of have to tweak, I think it's just going to be such an asset to this community. So.
Mr. Howard.
Yeah, excellent project, excellent presentation. I'm really excited for the town and for MERKIN Vineyards. Thanks for coming.
I've said far too much already. I think it's just, it'll be great. I support it.
You read the stipulations as we set forth in the staff report? You have, yes, and those are acceptable?
They are acceptable.
Okay. Just want to make sure of that when we...
No argument on our side.
Yes, and like I say, it is stated, you build it, they will come. This will be our signature project in this city. It's the biggest major project I've seen outside of the hospital that we built in this town. It's going to be, I think, a tremendous tourist draw. And yes, city better be prepared to provide a lot more parking offsite, because a lot of people are going to be down there somewhere, and I don't want them up my neighborhood. And we don't want parking along Verde Heights Drive when they fill up your parking lot. We don't want those people parking up in our neighborhood, so I think the city needs to look at no parking along and through there, because you'll be overwhelmed. 76 spots will be overwhelmed. But hopefully a lot of people will choose to take the lift or for the fun of it, or walk up. Yeah.
The parking lot's Krishan design down there.
Yeah. Maybe you could just reserve that upper parking lot where you're at for people over 70 or something. So as old folks, we could drive up in there.
Okay.
No, that's good.
Will do.
Thank you, Ray. All right. Any other comments, questions before we entertain a motion? Would you?
Nope, I guess I will jump in there.
Jump in there, please.
Dispense some more words. I would like to move to approve DR 19-011 MERKIN Vineyards at Old Town Cottonwood, subject to the following stipulations. 1, that the project is developed in accordance with the design review plans submitted for the October 21st, 2019 Planning and Zoning, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I want to stop you just for a second for the next one. So everybody understands on the commission, I didn't, what is ordinance number 627? I don't know what in those ordinances, but that was our PAD approval for 2017, just for clarification. So we can leave it the way it's written, but I just wanted to clarify to our commissioners that that's what that was, okay?
Yeah, as a supplemental.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement.
Yeah, no.
We want to go to dinner.
Go ahead.
You can just leave it the way it is. I'm just.
Okay. 2, that the project conforms to the stipulations outlined in ordinance number 627, approved by the City Council on August 15th, 2017. 3, okay, I'm just making sure I'm getting it right here. 3, any other required supporting documentation is submitted to staff and approved, i.e. drainage reports, surveys, etc. 4, the use of alternative surfacing for the parking lot may be considered if and as allowed by city code or the approved PAD. 5, the developer work with the city engineer to provide an appropriate and acceptable pathway from the top of Verde Heights Drive to the intersection of Verde Heights Drive at Pima Street. 6, work with staff to ensure all proposed signs meet sign ordinance requirements. 7, a certificate of zoning compliance documenting the completion of conditions shall be issued by June 21st, 2022.
That's all we need.
All right.
Very good. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Mr. Hart seconds the Vice Chairman's motion. Roll call vote, please, Brenda.
Commissioner Hart?
Aye.
Commissioner Dowell?
Aye.
Commissioner Dowling?
Aye.
Commissioner Narwood?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherman?
Aye.
Chairman Williams?
Aye. Thank you. Congratulations. Good luck. We're looking forward to it. That ends our agenda for this evening. I don't think we, do you have any other items okay, you have an informational thing on emails, yes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commission, staff would just like to remind you our preference on communicating with city email accounts that you all have been provided with. If you're unsure on how to access it, our IT department is available to help you. However, if you do prefer to use your personal account, we will still send emails to that account. But again, we do prefer you to use your city email for transparency purposes.
Well, yeah. My concern, I brought this up, is city employees, council people, they're using it all the time. You know, we don't use it. We don't conduct business over the internet as such. We haven't had occasion to do that.
I check mine every day.
And, well, it's, because you're an ex-city council person. But most of us don't. When we get something like just a simple announcement that our packets are ready, to me, that doesn't seem to violate any transparency rules or whatever. You're just telling us your packets are ready for your next meeting, come and get them. Now, if it's more detailed or more information that's more related, then maybe, I would certainly agree with that. I don't have any problem with transparency. I think we need to, I'm ready for it. I think it's great.
It is best practice to
it's a best
use
practice.
city emails. And just be aware, though not likely, it is always possible that a personal email account could be audited if it is used to communicate as a commissioner.
That's fine.
So again, we would prefer you using your city email account. If you need help with it, let us know, but we will still send to your personal emails as well.
Just on things like that. If it gets any more, just give us an alert. Hey, go look at your city account or something. Just, go look at your city email. And that's fine. Yeah. I don't know how anybody else feels.
I would disagree only because I'm the opposite side. I don't look at my personal one. The city one pops and I read that one 24/7. So it's just my preference. I think it's all a preference thing, but.
Well, you're getting a city employee.
Right, but I don't look at my personal, I really hate.
You're right. But the rest of us do rely, or most of us rely on that. We don't, we're that's how we communicate.
Yeah,
with it.
that's all I had.
All right, that's fine. Anything else? So I think we're good.
Can we bring up something from, I don't know, never mind, that's okay.
Okay. Well, you can talk to staff or whatever.
I'll deal with it.
Okay. Meeting's adjourned.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.